There's an odd type of steel out there. It's called Wootz. It's a crucible steel used in India and Persia. Oh, it started about 200 AD and they stopped making it in the late 1800s. It was a crucible process, meaning that it started in a sealed crucible. This is a modern silicon carbide crucible, but they would have used dirt, different kinds of clays. But essentially, you put in all the raw material to make a decent steel, and you liquefy it. Put it in a furnace, get it hot enough to melt, and then you pull out a solid chunk of steel. This one weighs about maybe 8 pounds. Yeah, roughly 8 pounds. One of the largest ingots I've made. So they would construct these things, essentially like this. Their crucibles would get shattered. They would take this material, heat it up, forge it out. Modern constraints, I weld on a handle. They would have used tongs. But essentially this becomes this. Consolidates, you change the shape, forge it into something usable. Now out of these they made some of the best swords of their area, of their period. They were called Damascus swords. The steel was in fact Wootz, but commonly known as Damascus steel. Nowadays, that term can mean both the pattern-welded steels or this crucible process. They've been twined into one term, but they're actually two distinct different processes. What I do is take the raw ingot, turn it into bar stock, forge it out, and then make it into usable items, or in this case, showing items. I don't think too many people would actually use a sword blade these days for anything other than having fun on a weekend. But these were battle blades. This one will eventually be curved quite drastically. It'll be curved to where the point sits about here. So a rather drastic curve, more of a horseman's dagger, or a sword rather, than something someone on foot would use. This will be patterned after a Persian blade called a shamshir, which were curved horseman swords. We have here an old original example of a Indian Tovar, which is another footman's weapon. This one was probably made in North India in about the early 1800s, maybe a wee bit older than that. It's been well used. You can see up here it's the original width, and it's shrunk about 1/4 inch through resharpenings. Handle is small for various reasons. Either the people were a bit smaller or their fighting style necessitated a different grip than what we would be used to. This blade will be sacrificed and cut up, measured, bent, destructive tested down at Northwestern's lab, and we'll find out what makes it tick. Chemical analysis have been done for hundreds of years on this stuff. It was actually the first steel that people put a microscope to. Started the whole field of metallurgy. Was centered around this field, around this sword rather, this steel. So I'm real interested to see the results of this and how it compares to the steel that I'm making. Been working on this for about 10 years. It's kind of a hoot to actually have a major university interested too. So we'll see where that goes. Difficult cut as close to the hilt as we can up in here to preserve the thickest material, and another cut here and here and a few more here for different chemical tests. But these two samples will get bent. This one to see how well the steel does, and I'm not sure if you can pick it up on the camera, but there's a diagonal line here. That's actually a forge weld, so they joined one piece of Wootz here with another piece of Wootz over here by welding at an angle. Very interesting. You'll see this on quite a few old blades. There's also evidence on a sword I have inside of a welded on tang, the part that goes into the handle. That was welded on to a sword blade as well. So this is very uncommon, and we're going to be able to see a whole lot of interesting effects right in here in this weld zone. So it's of particular interest to analyze this. But I have mixed feelings about cutting into a 200-year-old blade, but since no one else has done it, and I happen to have the blade, and it's not a particularly fantastic one, meaning that it's been well used. This, in my opinion, underwent some form of heat treatment. I mean, there's quite a bit of spring in this. And I'm exerting a fair amount of force on this thing, and it shows absolutely no indication of letting go, which is a very good thing. And you'll notice I'm not sure where the most bend is occurring, but I mean, it should be equidistant between my hands, but I'm thinking it's bending a little bit more up in here. I can't tell from my angle, but
looks like.
But at any rate, this is a relatively decent functional blade, and I'm very interested to see what kind of results we're going to get from this. With the electric tool, we don't want to generate too much heat here. We just want to separate the sword blade.